Hello, my name is Ezenwa Ngbenu, and this is Paul Emmanuel, and in this episode of Know Your Food, we're going to be looking at milk. Now, milk is a food that is associated with goodness for the body, highly nutritious, great for infants, strong bones, strong teeth, but an important distinction has to be made between pasteurized milk and raw milk, because raw milk is in fact the milk that is beneficial for the body, and pasteurized milk, that is the commercially available milk, especially in this environment here in Nigeria, is actually highly problematic. So let's briefly look at raw milk. Raw milk is a living fluid. It's quite similar to blood. If you looked at raw milk under the microscope, you find that it's highly structured. It's a highly ordered state. And that is quite significant because that order and that structure helps in the digestion and the assimilation of the nutrients it contains. But pasteurized milk is in a disordered state by virtue of the processes that it undergoes. So raw milk contains various globules of fat that are suspended in liquid water. And these fat globules contain various vitamins, various minerals, like for example vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, and the minerals calcium, magnesium, phosphorus. And in this globular structure, they're in a highly absorbable state, very easy to digest, very easy to absorb, highly bioavailable for the body. And in addition to these globules, you also find various bacteria. And these bacteria are probiotics. That is, these are beneficial strains of bacteria. Unfortunately, raw milk has been demonized, and it's often been linked with cases of tuberculosis. But when you look at the statistics, there is actually very little risk in consuming raw milk, especially when it is pasture-fed. Raw milk becomes problematic in factory farms where the cows are confined in unsanitary conditions. But when you have pasture-fed cows, that is the bucolic image that we have of milk, actually. Milk that's cows that eat what they're supposed to, grass, out in the open environment. That milk is very safe, and the bacteria that it contains are actually very beneficial. And when we consume this milk, these bacteria colonize our gut, our small intestine and large intestine, where they synthesize many vitamins, where they assist in the absorption of many of these nutrients. So without this bacteria, milk has a very different quality. In addition, there are also various proteins in milk. There are various growth factors, various immunoglobulins like antibodies that have immune boosting properties, and other types of proteins. And the important thing is that all these proteins are in their native state. They're in their natural conformation. This is what I mean. A protein is a string of amino acids that has adopted a very complex three-dimensional architecture. And this shape of the protein determines its activity. Once the protein loses this shape, it's no longer the same thing. It can actually become quite harmful to the body because it might be very difficult to digest, or it might promote certain immune reactions. And in the action of pasteurization, the temperature of milk is raised sometimes between 60 degrees Celsius to 75 degrees Celsius for a period of 30 minutes. And that elevation of temperature alters the structure of various proteins. So let's say now this was an enzyme, like for example phosphatase, because raw milk contains various enzymes that assist in the digestion of milk, like in the absorption of lactose, that also assist in the absorption of various vitamins and minerals. When these proteins or these enzymes, their shapes are altered in pasteurization, this three-dimensional shape becomes something radically different, and then it's no longer the same protein, and the protein no longer has the same action. Unfortunately, when you look at the label of milk, they're like, oh, 10% protein, and we think a protein is a protein, but it's not. A protein requires that three-dimensional shape to have its beneficial action. So when milk is pasteurized, you have a lot of altered and unnatural proteins, and a lot of these proteins can become problematic. For example, the major protein in milk is casein. Once you pasteurize milk, that casein becomes thermalized casein. And that thermalized casein is very difficult to digest. It's almost like vulcanized rubber. So it gets into your digestive tract, and the only bacteria that are able to really break it down effectively are pathogenic bacteria. So when you consume pasteurized milk, you're promoting the growth of harmful bacteria. And the statistics bear this out, because you find out that a lot of infants and young children that are given pasteurized milk regularly, like for example the formula-fed babies, they are much more susceptible to various infectious challenges, just because their gut, where most of their immune system is located, is just loaded with harmful bacteria as a result of the fertilizing effect of pasteurized milk. So P, some of what I'm explaining is that some of this tin milk is not the best something. You agree?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, you drink now.
You gonna drink our baby?
Yeah. The best thing now, early in the morning.
Early in the morning?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, say sometimes no go joy about early in the morning. Can take this one.
Okay.
Early in the morning.
You go hold you?
Yes, till 1 o'clock.
No shaking?
No shaking.
Okay. Another thing to consider is that tinned milk, this canned milk, this commercial milk, in addition to pasteurization, it goes through other processes. One of these processes is homogenization. If you recall, raw milk contains many globules of fat. And unfortunately, these globules tend to accumulate on the surface because, you know, fat and water don't mix. So this is the water fraction of milk. These fat globules accumulate on the surface, and it forms this unsightly mass of fatty substances. Now, it might not be pleasing to the eye, but this is the richness of milk, because a lot of beneficial cholesterol, a lot of beneficial saturated fats, a lot of beneficial vitamins and minerals are stored in these fatty globules. And these fatty globules are what makes all those beneficial nutrients bioavailable. Without the fat globules, they are very difficult to absorb. So homogenization is a process where the milk is passed through a screening process that removes a lot of these fat globules. Like for example, commercial milk, when you pour it into a cup, you tend not to see anything floating. You know, it's just there's a sameness. It's just this white liquid, you know, and that action of homogenization, though it makes the milk appear better because there are no unsightly fat globules floating around, but you have impoverished the milk. You have removed a lot of the beneficial things in milk. And one of the most dangerous things that occur in the process of homogenization is the effect it has on the cholesterol in milk, because milk contains cholesterol. And contrary to what we're told in the mass media, cholesterol is actually very essential for the body. For example, human breast milk is loaded with cholesterol because that's what a baby needs. It needs cholesterol for the development of its brain. Every single cell in the body requires cholesterol for the synthesis of various hormones, estrogens, your testosterone, aldosterone, various hormones that are critical for that infant. They use cholesterol as the building block. Even vitamins like vitamin D is synthesized from cholesterol. So milk has a very important constituent in cholesterol, but when you homogenize milk, something happens to cholesterol, because once the cholesterol is passed through the very fine mesh that separates the water from the fat, that gives milk that plain appearance that we're used to, the cholesterol becomes oxidized. Basically, it's damaged. So you have oxidized cholesterol, that's damaged cholesterol. And it is this oxidized cholesterol that deposits in the arteries, that deposits in various sensitive sites in the body and creates problems. So cholesterol that we tend to think as being uniformly bad, what we actually ought to be concerned with is damaged cholesterol, oxidized cholesterol, and that is what this homogenization does. So if you consume raw milk, you get health promoting cholesterol. But once you consume pasteurized milk, you get damaged cholesterol because that milk has been homogenized largely for cosmetic reasons, but the better appearance of the milk is actually quite toxic because the cholesterol in the milk has now been altered. It's now been oxidized, and it is that oxidized cholesterol. So let's say now this is a blood vessel. So you now get, and then this is the cholesterol from milk. Obviously it's been digested, it's been assimilated, you know, and it's now in the circulation. Is this oxidized cholesterol that ends up in plaques in your arteries and that gradually occlude your arteries, that gradually block and harden your arteries. So pasteurized milk plays a critical role in the development of both hypertension, of both heart disease. Obviously, this is not such a problem for infants because at that age, you know, the development of this plaque is still at a very, very early stage. But it's as if you're starting off with a very poor foundation because already you're exposing an infant that has a very high need for cholesterol with a lot of damaged cholesterol. So that's going to have issues. I mean, it's going to cause problems even for the development of the brain. It's going to have problems, create issues for the development of the immune system. It's going to create all sorts of problems. P. So you understand what I talk?
No, yes, sir.
Okay. Everything I still just they explain, they say some of all this tin milk, nobody bet. I don't know if you know that local milk where some of all these outside people they carry up and down. You don't see that kind of thing before.
Okay, you don't see them now.
The local one, we know they inside anything. You don't drink that one before.
Ah, no, okay.
Okay.
No, okay. For outside people. You don't put that in, and you don't put this thing. You go smell small. You pay somebody. You don't drink.
But you don't drink them?
I don't drink them now.
How that one they do for your body?
The same thing for our
okay. They do good. Okay. Another thing, especially in this environment here in Nigeria, where almost all the milk that we consume is imported, you know, a lot of it is imported from Europe, and also a lot of it is imported from Asia. And the Asian milk, because there is a lot of unscrupulous practices that occur in the production of this commercial milk, you know, and it all boils down to profit maximization. So, for example, most of the milk that we have in this environment has actually been diluted, and this dilution is because it creates more volume, and more volume equals more profits for the manufacturer. But you know that once you dilute milk, it alters the color, it alters the taste, it alters the texture. So certain things that are added, and these things tend to be cheap, that now make the milk appear like nothing has been done to it. And this is a standard industry practice, this dilution. So when you dilute milk, it is no longer as white. So what they do is that they add a pigment, titanium dioxide. And titanium dioxide is the same pigment that is used in making white paint. And the problem with titanium dioxide is that those very small particles are highly toxic to the liver and to the kidney. So titanium dioxide damages the liver and the kidney. And also when you dilute milk, the fat content is altered. So what they do is that they add in vegetable oils. And this vegetable oil tends to be hydrogenated. So you are now exposed to a lot of trans fats. And these trans fats are damaging to internal organs. And these trans fats also disrupt a lot of hormonal signaling in the body. Additionally, once you dilute milk, the texture of the milk is also altered. So other things are also added to the milk to now stabilize it, and to also give it that same feel as if it was not diluted. And all these chemicals, you know, in total are just harmful for the body. And additionally, in this drive for profit maximization, and now this is, you know, a much wider practice, you know, a lot of these cows are given various growth hormones, are given various antibiotics as well, because this promotes growth and this boosts milk output. And a lot of these growth hormones end up in the milk. So when we consume milk, we're consuming a lot of synthetic growth hormones, and these synthetic growth hormones disrupt and have a lot of effects in the body. Like, for example, they can cause premature puberty. And it's happening a lot because now you see young girls at the age of 8, already seeing their menses. They experience menarche. And you see a lot of young boys, even before the normal age of puberty, they're already like having body odor, showing signs that there's abnormal hormonal activity going on in the body. And the dangerous thing about this abnormal hormonal balance in the body of young children is that it puts them at much higher risk for various chronic disease, various cancers, like for example breast cancer, prostate cancer, also various other chronic conditions like diabetes, hypertension, liver disease, just because of the disruption that it creates in the body. So really, the profit maximizing principle that is at work in the milk, both in the end of dilution and also trying to get the cows to produce more milk, it just creates this toxic milieu of various chemicals, hormones, antibiotics that are in no way beneficial. Unfortunately for us, we still have this bucolic image of raw milk from pasture-fed cows, but that is no longer the commercial reality. Milk is a very, very different product, especially in third world environments like Nigeria, that is a dumping ground for various low quality products that have been massively diluted and have therefore have various additives. Like in 2008, there was a certain scandal concerning a formula for babies in which when they diluted milk, the protein content went down. And in order to boost the appearance of protein in milk, they added an industrial chemical called melamine. Melamine is a chemical that is used to produce various types of plastics. And this chemical is nitrogen rich. And natural protein is also nitrogen based. So to give the appearance of an adequate amount of protein, they added this nitrogenous industrial chemical called melamine. And this chemical, it led to a lot of problems for infants that consumed it in Nigeria at that time. A lot of kids had kidney failure. A good number of kids also died, I believe around like 30 something, but I'm not too sure about that statistic. But it just goes to show the callousness of the milk producers. In the action of dilution, what they add is of such low quality that all they're trying to do is create the appearance of milk. In many ways, commercial milk is not so much milk, but it is just the appearance of milk. It's a collection of various chemicals that just give the appearance, the taste, the texture of milk. But the nutritional quality, the many beneficial properties of raw pasture-fed milk are no longer there. Now, to close, milk is always advertised as a good source of calcium, which it is, but the problem is that, once again, raw milk is a highly structured state with various globules, with various bacteria, with various proteins, and the effect of that highly ordered state is that it contains information for the utilization of calcium. So once you consume raw milk, that calcium goes where it is supposed to. It goes to your bones, it goes to your teeth, it goes to some of your muscles, it goes to some of your nerves to help in conduction and whatnot. But when you consume pasteurized milk, because pasteurization has destroyed a lot of the proteins and homogenization has stripped out a lot of the fat, the information in milk has been stripped away. So you still have some calcium, but the information on how to utilize that calcium is no longer there. Here's what I mean by information. Vitamin K, which you get in raw milk, is critical for calcium to end up where it is supposed to. If you consume milk that does not contain vitamin K, or at least an active form of vitamin K, because in pasteurized milk, what you just have is damaged vitamin K, which is no longer active. When this vitamin K is not present, milk ends up where it's not supposed to, and what you end up with is called ectopic calcification. And here's what I mean. So let's just look at the human body. So we consume milk, and our hope is that milk gets into our bones, into our skeletal structure, right? Into our backbone, our ribs, and whatnot, making for strong bones and teeth. But pasteurized milk, because there is no active vitamin K, this milk ends up going where it is not supposed to. So for example, it goes to the heart. Okay, so this is supposed to be the heart. So you end up with calcium deposits in the heart, and this hardens the heart, this calcifies the heart. It also ends up in various blood vessels. So for example, this is an artery. You get calcium, various calcium deposits in the arteries, which hardens and stiffens the arteries. This is arteriosclerosis. This leads to hypertension. This leads to heart disease. This leads to various problems. You also end up with calcium in the brain. So you find out that you have little gravels of calcium, these little microscopic pebbles in the brain. And various autopsies have shown this. So you end up with calcium deposits in the brain. You get the hardening of various soft tissues, both the kidneys, in the liver. So calcium ends up where it is not supposed to. So again, once you have a food that is the appearance of food, so in milk you have calcium, but you don't have the necessary nutrients for you to utilize that calcium appropriately, it creates problems and disruptions in the body. So again, the beneficial milk for human consumption is raw milk. Either breast milk when you're an infant, or for an adult, raw milk from pasture-fed cows. Any other form of milk is highly problematic. But unfortunately, the media advertising, and the promotion from the dairy industry does not allow us to have access to this simple truth. And milk, instead of being a health-promoting food, is a highly problematic milk. That is pasteurized, homogenized, packaged milk. And there are other ways in which milk is harmful, but for the sake of time, I will not go into that. So P, my suggestion is that all that Hausa milk, make you face that one, that local one. That one, they better pass all this one when they 14. No.
Not the same.
Not the same.
Yes.
Okay. I no go follow you talk.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.